Okay. Morning, I'm Brian Butler. I'm the director of our Clubhouse program and our homeless outreach program at Wasatch Mental Health. I'm also a therapist at Gateway Counseling in Provo. I've been asked to come here and talk with you about effectively managing stress. As you can probably imagine, stress is something that we all experience, especially adolescents, people in your age group. We have tests, we have social media, we have relationships, we have school, we have friends, all kinds of things that generate stress within us. And I hate to tell you that, but it doesn't go away. Stress continues to come at us through our entire lives. So first of all, let's talk about what is stress. What causes us this angst, this anxiety, and what is it? Usually, well, one definition is stress is a specific response by the body to a stimulus as fear or pain that disturbs or interferes with the normal, physiological equilibrium of an organism. Now, that's dictionary.com. And most definitions of stress tend to focus on the negative. What we're really talking about when we lump everything into this definition of stress is we're talking about distress usually. Distress, by definition, is stress that interferes with our functioning. And for the next couple of minutes, I'd like you to kind of consider focusing on stress as, interfering with functioning. Or there is also another definition of stress called eustress. This kind of stress is actually positive stress that can contribute to a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment. Can you think of anything like that? For instance, you're not getting good grades in a particular class. You're feeling a little pressure. That motivates you to maybe study a little bit harder. You take the next test, you get a better grade, improve your grade overall. There's a sense of accomplishment that probably wouldn't happen unless you actually felt a little stress to motivate you to do what you needed to do. That's called eustress. Now, in essence, stress by itself, just like any other emotion or experience, is neither good or bad. And I'd like you to consider that because we often think of emotions generally as either good or bad, but really they're just emotions. And if we can think about it that way, we're taking the first step to effectively managing stress. Now, whether stress becomes functional or dysfunctional really depends upon how we choose to view and respond to it. So, first of all, we need to reduce our vulnerability to stressful situations if we're going to manage stress effectively. Now, these are things that you've probably heard since you were very young. It's not going to be anything new, but they are very important to do before we can actually address stress. First of all, have you ever noticed when you're sick that you tend to be a little more irritable, things seem a little bit more overwhelming? And sometimes we don't do a very good job of treating our physical illness. Maybe we think, well, yeah, I'm under the weather, but gosh, I got this deadline I got to meet. I've got to respond to my friends on Facebook. And that just actually causes more stress. Our body is already under stress. That contributes to the mental stress that we may be feeling. So it's important that we treat physical illness. Of course, like your mom always says, eat balanced meals. If we're not eating, some of us, and I know this happens in my home, some of us become pretty grumpy. And things start to seem a little more overwhelming. Eating is fulfilling a basic need that our body has. When we're hungry, it's telling us, feed me, right? We need to respond to that. And of course, sleep. Now, anybody have an idea of how many hours the average teenager gets per night? 7 to 7.5 hours. Do you know how much you actually need? 9 to 9.5. So about 9.25 hours is what we need. So teenagers are a typical sleep-deprived population, and I think you're going to hear more about this maybe tomorrow. But we do need about that 9.5 hours of sleep at your age. And also, of course, exercise. Exercise is critical. So one more thing is it's important, if we're going to manage stress effectively, that we are able to develop mastery in something. So we're doing something that we're good at. That just helps our overall sense of accomplishment, our overall sense of well-being, And that can give us the resources that we need so when stressful situations come our way, we're effectively able to deal with them. Now, you might say, this is good and fine, but hey, I'm already stressed. So how do I get rid of the stress? I don't like being stressed. I want to get rid of it. Well, there's an inherent problem in that question, because if we try to avoid stress altogether or get rid of it, over time, that actually causes stress to increase. And frankly, it's just not realistic. If we try to avoid stress or just close ourselves off to any stressful situation, that usually results in problematic coping mechanisms or addictive types of behavior. So a lot of the people that I meet with in my private counseling gig are people who struggle with addictions. And really, when you get down to the bottom of it, they're generally having problems with relationships or trying to avoid feeling bad. And that avoidance is causing more problems. The addiction actually causes more stress than they had to begin with. Now, learning to regulate stress is really the better option. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So have you ever seen this light in your car dashboard? Sometimes it really gets annoying, starts blinking at you. It might be your oil light, it might be your check engine light. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes that really starts to annoy me. And so it seems like the best option would be to just put a sticky note over it. Think about that. Put a sticky note over it, you don't see it blinking anymore. Feels pretty good right then. Until a few miles down the road, all of a sudden in the middle of a snowstorm maybe, your engine seizes, you're out of luck. You're stalled. That's what happens when we try to avoid stress, where we cover it up, or we try to cope with it through various things that actually cause more problems. We just put that sticky note over the oil lamp or the oil light and pretend it doesn't exist, and then the problems compound. So a lot of the practice that I do, it has to do with mindfulness practice. Mindfulness practice is an effective stress reducer, but it does a lot of other things as well. It was once confined to an Eastern meditative practice, but in recent years has really come into Western medicine, and practitioners, doctors, therapists are integrating it into their practice all over the place. So it's also been validated through neuroscience as an effective stress reducer, helps people concentrate, helps people focus better, and regulate distressing emotions. You may have seen something similar to mindfulness in terms of meditation, yoga, relaxation exercises, things like that. Mindfulness practice takes all of those things in and adds a few more things as well. As I mentioned, it does improve your focus, concentration, and awareness. Mindfulness is all about awareness, becoming aware of your inner environment inside of you, improving your relationship with yourself, but also your awareness and your connection with the world around you. In fact, it utilizes that mind-body connection that we all have to relax the brain and therefore reducing the stress. And the way we do that is we relax the body, which in turn relaxes the brain. And that helps us better able to regulate stress. Mindfulness practice, in a nutshell, teaches us how to be present with our emotions in a non-judgmental way. Remember how I said emotions are neither good or bad? That's really critical that we approach it from a non-judgmental standpoint in order to respond appropriately to our body cues. Our body will tell us what it needs. We just need to be in the right frame of mind to respond appropriately to that. I want you to consider your mind as a conveyor belt. So here we have a conveyor belt at a grocery store, it looks like, as the items kind of come along, and the clerk is there to ring them up and to bag them. Now, in your mind, you have a similar conveyor belt in a sense. Things come across your consciousness. We could imagine them as coming across in cans. Your job is really not to take all of the cans off of the conveyor belt or get on the conveyor belt and go down the conveyor belt with them, get stuck to those cans, but really to discern which cans are which, observing them, labeling them, describing them, and then deciding from what I like to call a wise mind perspective, which cans are things you need to respond to and take off the conveyor belt, and which cans you really don't need to respond to. Maybe they're not your issue. Maybe it's not something you can control right now. Maybe it's not something that, maybe it's something you can do something about, but maybe you can't do anything about it right now. And so mindfulness helps you let those things kind of pass along on the conveyor belt. Now, like I said about the mind-body connection, the way the conveyor belt actually moves is through your breathing. And as you do deep breathing, as you relax your body, you relax your mind, you unstick yourself from those stressful emotions, allow them to come and go, and you develop a sense of mastery over what's going on in your mind. So that takes a lot of practice. The conveyor belt is a imagery tool that I use a lot, especially with people struggling with addictions, so that they can learn to kind of separate themselves from those emotions and those urges, those stressful feelings, and at the same time, in a paradoxical way, be connected with those and better able to manage their psychological environment there. Now, with mindfulness, if you're interested at all in practicing this, and you don't have a professional to help with that, then as with about everything these days, there's an app for that. And I actually had a client who I was working and doing mindfulness practice with find this app called Headspace, and I've really enjoyed it. One, it's a subscription app, but if you're interested in it, it does do a 10-day trial where they do mindfulness exercises for 10 days, absolutely free. And you can use that over and over and over again. So they have cool little animations, and it's been pretty useful. I give this to my clients quite a bit. There's also something called a mindfulness bell, which is really nice because if you buy an actual mindfulness bell, it's like $300, but the virtual mindfulness bell is absolutely free, can be on your phone, and you can set a timer where it rings and just lets you stop and focus on what's going on in your mind, practice that conveyor belt activity, so to speak, and move on with your day. Mindfulness is a skill just like any other. It requires practice. And if you're not doing daily practice, you're probably not going to be able to use it when you need it. Another one is that I refer my clients to is a website actually called tarabrock.com. Tara Brock is a psychologist who's really a mindfulness guru, and she instructs people in mindfulness practice quite a bit. On her website is a little icon that says guided meditations, and she literally has hundreds of guided meditations to really help you just kind of settle into yourself, accept what is going on, take that non-judgmental stance, and just be present with your emotions, with your thoughts, with whatever is going on in there, really becoming comfortable with yourself. And that's really key, because if you don't have a positive relationship with yourself, it's really difficult to have a positive relationship with others, the world around you. And really, when we don't have positive relationships, stress really goes up and makes it really difficult. So I hope that's been somewhat useful to you. And if you have any questions, my office is at Wasatch Mental Health. Our crisis line is always available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's 801-373-7393. If you're ever in a situation where you need some help and you don't know who to talk to, you're always welcome to call that line, and there'll be somebody there to talk with you. Thank you very much.